All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for the Point San Pedro Road Community Meeting. We are thrilled to have so many community members here from the Point San Pedro Road Peninsula. We are thrilled to have officials from our city government and from our county government and from other organizations. We also have board members from the Federation, or steering committee members from the Federation of San Rafael Neighborhoods. People from outside our neighborhood are here joining us. We're happy to welcome everyone. And my name's Bonnie Marmor. My co-president Denise Lucy is here. I am also happy to introduce Kevin Haggerty, our treasurer. He has recently taken on that role as treasurer for 17 years. Dave Crutcher was our treasurer, and so now Dave stepped down and Kevin has taken over for him in that role. Several of our board members are traveling today and could not be with us, and but we're forging ahead in any event. All right, so because we are behind schedule, I am going to go ahead and just move forward. I wanted to be sure to give a little background about the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. We work with our neighbors collaboratively. We try to take a role of at providing education to our community on issues with regard to environmental issues, sea level rise. We provide education around the elections. We want to provide information to our community so that we can have an informed community. We also try to play a role sometimes when different groups may have different opinions on matters that affect our community so that they have a place to go where they can talk about what their desires are and their issues are and hear one another and have public meetings so that we can all share our thoughts and work out things together and work with our elected representatives. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, our Marin County Supervisor for District 1, Mary Sackett. This is the first time we've actually been able to have her at one of our meetings in person. We're so excited to be back in person after the pandemic. She has been here for online meetings, but this is our first in-person one, Mary. A warm welcome, and I don't want to take any more of your time. We're behind schedule, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bonnie, for all that you do in organizing this and getting everybody here today. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. So before we get started, I just want to take a moment to recognize the fearless leader, Dr. Lucy. And if you have been paying attention, recently she was awarded as the Citizen Community Benefit Leader of the Year by the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce. And I think so many of you have seen her action here within the coalition, but really she is doing that within Dominican University, within the city of San Rafael, regionally as just a wonderful and amazing leader that we are so lucky to have. So thank you, Dr. Lucy. And you ding that chime when you want to cut me off. I will try to wrap up, I will try to speed up my remarks a little bit. So as your county supervisor, I represent this area, and I represent around China Camp, Santa Venetia, the east side of North San Rafael, Marin, Lucas Valley, Terra Linda, and the north half of 4th Street. So that's my jurisdiction. My aide, Julia Reinhardt, is in the back with her hand up. We do send out, if you want to raise your hand a little higher, Julia. She's got my business card. She's also got a sign-in sheet. If you don't get our monthly newsletter and you're interested in that, I try to just keep you up to date on what's happening in the county. So please take that opportunity. And also, if you want to reach out directly to me on any issue, please do. Happy to meet, go for a walk, and connect with you in any way, shape, or form. So many of you know, this area out here is a patchwork jurisdiction between county and city. And so what that really requires of us as elected officials is to work closely together. And so I'm so happy to see Mayor Kate. We work closely and talk together a lot on all sorts of issues as we really try to represent you in the best way that we can at both the city and the county level. Councilmember Bushy and I both serve together on the Marin Transit Board and also take an opportunity to meet monthly to just make sure that we're hearing the same thing and representing you in the city. And then I meet with the other city council members. Councilmember Kurtz and I have a lot of territory that overlaps. So I just want you to know that we do informal and formal communication in order to make sure that we're hearing from you. And so if you come to me in an issue that may be more related to the city, I'm happy to meet and hear from you. And if we need to work with the city to address it, we try our best to do that. So I'm gonna go kind of rapid fire through some of the high level issues. And again, if you want to know more, let me know, and I'm happy to go into further detail. First and foremost, climate is a very important issue to me. I ride my bike to and from the Civic Center about 40 miles a week, just going to meetings. I didn't ride out here this morning, I will confess, but I tried to do that as much as possible. What I'm really excited about on a climate front, which may seem small at times, but starting November 10th, the reusable foodware ordinance is going in place. So that's going to ask each of us to bring our own coffee cups, bring our own forks and spoons if we are getting carry out. And if not, the coffee cups, there will be a 25-cent charge that'll go to the business. And if you saw yesterday's Marin IJ headline, there's a big effort by all of our regional agencies to keep pollution out of the bay and the ocean. And this is one of those upstream things that we can all do individually in order to decrease wetlands up in the bay and the ocean. So it seems sometimes wonky and like, why do I have to pay 25 cents to have a coffee cup that I want to walk down the street with? But it's one of many ways to keep litter and trash off our streets and out of the bay. And that will go in effect on November 10th, where it will start to be enforced. And I just ask that it's not the business's fault. So if you're frustrated when that charge is there, you can complain to me, but the businesses are there to enforce it. And we hope it will help them in the long run as well. One of the big issues I know I've heard some of you folks talk about, it's a big issue really around the county right now is around e-bike safety and what we're seeing with kids and accidents and just general concern. So my high level points on e-bike safety are, gotta make sure everybody's got a helmet. We gotta talk to everybody about riding tandem. Unless your bike is really designed to have kids on the back, there shouldn't be anybody on the back. And if there's ever a consideration, this was the request at my house yesterday. Like, can I get an e-bike for Christmas this year? If there's any consideration of that, the best practice is to focus on Class 1 e-bikes. There's a big concern that we're hearing from our public health officers in particular, but also our trauma surgeons, that they're just seeing more and more kids with throttle bikes ending up in trauma centers. So we've started to collect some of that data, and it's pretty striking. In the first 10 days of some data collection, where we're trying to differentiate between a regular bicycle injury and an e-bike industry, in the first 10 days, there were 4 kids who were taken by ambulance to the ER. So 100% of the children, 10 to 16, ended up going by ambulance to the ER. Of older adults, about 10% are on e-bikes ending up in the ER compared to regular bikes. So there's more to come on that, but we're really working at both the state level on what legislation we can look at, and also just working to educate parents and kids about helmet use and not having anybody on their bikes. And unfortunately, we've seen a really unfortunate situation with a kid on the back. And the kid on the back doesn't oftentimes have the helmet. So I also have teens, so I know that what I tell them doesn't always sink in. One of the issues that I know Mayor Kate and I, and frankly all county government, city government, and the state, frankly the nation is focusing on is homelessness, and how do we get people off of the streets and into homes. So in this county, we have the issue of really high cost of housing, as you know, and so getting people off the street is not easy. It takes a long time. So the county's approach is coordinated entry and getting people into stable housing. 78% of those folks who are living on the street that we're interacting with did have a Marin County residence before they ended up homeless. So oftentimes we think, oh, they're coming from out of the area or they're not from here, but the statistics really show that these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are our children, aunts and uncles, and it's important that we address that in a holistic way. And we are building beds for people experiencing homelessness and different treatment facilities in order to get them off the streets, but as everybody knows, it takes a long time and it's slow and it's a really difficult and intractable issue. I'm excited to say, as we are in November, do we have any veterans in the audience? Thank you, thank you, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to our country. One of the things we continue to focus on is ensuring that veterans are not experiencing homelessness within this county, and we are on a pathway to functional zero for veterans homelessness. There's some new units of housing being opened at Homeward Bound in Nevada that are solely available for people experiencing homelessness who were formerly veterans. 99 veterans have been housed since we started this program. And 30 veterans remain unhoused in this county, and we're hoping that when Homeward Bound opens within the next 18 months, that will change that. And there's a great veterans breakfast at Homeward Bound on Wednesday, the 11th? 8th, where you can help to celebrate that as well. And I'm happy to dig into those issues more. One of the things I'm excited to say is that starting in January, so the County of Marin has a mobile crisis unit, which will respond if you or a loved one or a neighbor are having a mental health crisis of any way, shape, or form. We recognize that law enforcement isn't always the best solution to that. It can escalate the situation, or it may not need our law enforcement resources. And so we developed a couple years ago a pilot for mobile crisis response. Starting in January, that mobile crisis response will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Yeah, it's very important, and I think we've come to learn that crises don't happen from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, that we really need to have that service available around the clock. And then they can call in law enforcement if needed, and they will be a tool available to schools as well, as we know that students and children are really facing unprecedented mental health crisis. So I want to share that on the County Board of Supervisors, I am the point person on older adults, and I really am enjoying that role. We have a wonderful Commission on Aging that is involved across our county in a number of fronts, on legislative advocacy, on housing interventions, on providing services, and so I'm excited to serve in that role. One of my focuses has really been on increasing the hourly wage for in-home supportive services. So in-home supportive services is a benefit available to low-income folks or people with disabilities, and it's kind of a state and federal effort to keep people in their homes if they want to stay in their homes and provide those in-home services. In-home service providers are currently paid just over $16 an hour. So we know they're commuting in from a long ways, and there's a lot of turnover because it's a tough work. It's really tough work for anybody who, they say you're either a caregiver, or you need a caregiver, or you're gonna need a caregiver at some point in your life. And so I think we all know that it's not easy and it's hard work. And so I've got a lot of focus on trying to increase that wage. And that wage comes from the federal, state, and county government on how it's paid. 3 different institutions split it. But I'm hoping that by January 1st, we'll be paying them $18 an hour, which is a lot less than most people pay babysitters. But it's a start and a step in the right direction. So I'm excited about that. Last night had an opportunity to celebrate all of the in-home supportive services workers with a really fun party and lots of karaoke. But I'll spare you from singing myself. So I'm glad to see, switching topics, I'm glad to see that the disaster preparedness van is out there. The county has restructured to some extent, and we now have a director of emergency services, Stephen Torrance. We did an evacuation drill just last week in Lucas Valley, which was an interesting lesson in just how to get ready and how to be ready within your own home, within your own driveway, and kind of what happens as a community when we need to evacuate. So if there's, I'm really glad that there's organizational efforts out here already underway, and if people aren't tapped into that, please do. I think one of the simplest things on disaster preparedness that we could all walk away from today is, are you signed up for Alert Marin? And are you signed up for Nixle? And if you're not, happy to help you do that. It's very important. That's how you're going to get the messaging if you need to evacuate. The second thing that I hadn't thought about until a couple weeks ago, somebody told me, is then when you sign up for those 2 things, change your do not disturb settings. So if your phone's off at night, you can change those so that those will come through. And again, a simple thing that we can do so that, you know, our phones will buzz and ring if in fact an emergency notification comes in the middle of the night. And as you are all aware, really excited that we've had some preventative burning within China Camp this week. We had one Thursday and then one week the week before. And for the people who've been on this coalition for a long time, they know the challenges with getting the state park to do some of that wildfire prevention work has really been a big challenge. And so it's great to see that work underway. So to just help prepare all of us, because so many of you join the state park. Other work underway. We, just later this month, we will approve a feasibility study for the China Camp Road project. That's a long one in the making, but really looking at what are the next steps for that roadway as we look at projections of sea level rise. So that will come to our board later this month, and you know, just continue to make sure that that roadway is available long past my time. So I am happy to take questions from anybody if they have them. I do want to just say that if you're looking for something else to do at the other end of your day, today is one of my favorite San Rafael days, which is Dia de los Muertos, and the procession that goes through the canal at dusk this evening from Alboro Community Center is a highlight of my year. It's really, go to a lot of public events, and I will say that one is really one of the most fun, where you just start walking through the street with a whole bunch of people, and candles and flashlights and dancers, and really just a wonderful chance to celebrate our community. So if you're looking for something to do tonight, I encourage you to go down there and participate in that, and I will be volunteering at one of the activity tables from 4 to 7, and I'm happy to talk to you there as well. So with that, I will look to Dr. Lucy. If there's time for a question or two, I'm happy to do it, or else I'm happy to get you outside too. You tell me.
Just do a couple questions.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the things that I come across with a lot of people, and myself included sometimes, is we know where our homes are located, in other words, what our jurisdictions are, but a lot of people don't. And in terms of like calling 911 in the case of an emergency, sometimes people don't, like in other words, there isn't like a non-emergency number for police or sheriff that people know will get answered, right? And so that's number one. And number two, we don't oftentimes know where, like we're taking a walk, we're jogging, we're riding a bike, we don't often know because the signage isn't that great. You know, it's kind of confusing. So are there any plans to better the signage on the roadways to delineate the boundaries? And also, is there a way to disseminate information where if there's an emergency, somebody knows who to call without calling 911, which in essence I think reaches CHP anyway, which is a delay and unnecessary.
So the question, if you couldn't hear it, was kind of about the city-county jurisdiction issues and people not necessarily knowing what jurisdiction they're in or who to call if they have an issue. So one of the great things about our reorganization of the Office of Emergency Services is that will take phone calls across the county and the other jurisdictions. So now we will have, emergency services will have one point and disseminate that information rather than each of the jurisdictions having their own. Really, the phone line could come in, but it may be patched across. Now all those folks will be physically together, the dispatchers, and so I think that will really help in getting information and getting response times as quick as they can be. When it comes to signing of the jurisdictions, I think one of the things that we do in partnership with the city is if you call me and it's a city issue, I want to make sure that I give you that warm handoff to the right person, and our office prides ourselves on doing that. I'm not just saying, oh, call somebody else, it's theirs. I have a feeling and a sense about signs, and somebody's probably studied it further than I have, but I think you can oversign things, and I don't know that if we said city, county, even along this roadway, it changes as you go up, and so I'm not sure that that's solvable with signage, but communication and definitely directing people to the right place is something that we strive for, and sitting down and saying, let's look at the map and, even some of your streets, one side city and one side's county. Councilmember Bushy and I have that on Marina Drive where it's like, is this one yours or mine today? So I understand the quagmire. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to solve that one today. Okay. Yeah.
Hi. I'd like to know what the county and perhaps the city in conjunction with the state has in plans should there be any situations around here for reaction to what's going on in the Middle East, anti-Semitic activity and Islamic activity, and that sort of thing. What things are in the background should something like that occur?
So the question was, what are we, city, county, nationally doing to be prepared with the conditions that's happening in the Middle East? And I will say that our sheriff, and Marin County Sheriff is very aware. On October 7th, he was my first phone call, and it's in part of their daily briefings, and places where there are synagogues, etc., are being there's more patrols. And the other thing I would say to you is if you are having an event or a gathering that you even are remotely concerned about, call law enforcement and say, hey, on Tuesday at 7, we're doing something so that there can be a presence. We do a lot of drills on all sorts of emergencies that could come our way at any time. And frankly, a lot of those drills are sort of emergency agnostic to try to, whether it could be an earthquake or a fire, or, an active shooter situation, whatever, we try to be prepared to make sure we have the right lines of communication, people know what to do, where to go, etc. I'm not sure I answered your question, but that's kind of what I can share. It's certainly on everyone's radar, and including law enforcement as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Sackett. We really appreciate you coming on a Saturday morning, and I want to thank you for giving a shout out to my co-president, Denise Lucy. That was so great. And for all the information that you imparted to our community. That was chock full of information. I learned a lot. And I want to also, before I get Mayor Kate up here, I just wanted to say, I really appreciate that Supervisor Sackett has been meeting so regularly with our city officials. That's been a great way for people to communicate as Supervisor Sackett described, we have this patchwork of city, county, city, county. We're all probably acutely aware of that. So it's great to have that communication among our leaders from the different jurisdictions. There's one other announcement I wanted to make, speaking of leaders, and that is our assembly member that represents us is Damon Connolly. We'll be jointly sponsoring an event, a legislative event, on November 15th with the Federation of San Rafael Neighborhoods. We've been doing some joint programs with them on candidate nights, that kind of thing, so we're looking forward to that. And we'll be posting that information and sending out information about that in the next day or two. So without any further ado, though, I would like to introduce San Rafael's Mayor, Kate. We've been so thrilled that she's been with us in the past on Zoom. But again, this is the first in person. I'm delighted she could be here, and I don't want to take any more time because we are crunched. So here you go.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I'm actually only going to speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to hand it over, so don't chime me yet, because I'm only getting 5 minutes. So, so nice to be here outside of the little Zoom screen. And I really just want to start with gratitude. Gratitude towards Bonnie, Denise, and really all your neighborhood leaders that work with the city and the county every single week, every single month. And so I just want to take a moment. If you're on a board for your neighborhood, either here or anywhere in San Rafael, can you just stand up right now? If you've been on a board, going to be on a board, yes. Look around. Look around. Thank you. And the reason I want to start there is that's democracy in action, right? And these are your neighbors and your friends that are showing up as volunteers. And I can't speak for them, but I know I get some pretty spicy emails, and I'm sure that they do too. And so I really want to appreciate all of them for your continued leadership, because we're in community together. We're on the same side. We want the same thing. So I want to remind everybody that I understand passion, and I understand disagreement, and I'm so appreciative when people write me emails where they disagree, and they say it in a way that's maybe a little kind or a little compassionate, because I do think that starts with us. And I speak to schools a lot, and when I talk about the kind of anxiety in our community, I look out and, like, whether they're sixth graders or high school students, they nod their head in understanding. And as I sit here in this role, that's one thing I want to address. I don't want our community to be anxious. I don't want our children to be scared. I don't want us to be going after each other. So deep gratitude to all of you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in the days, weeks, months ahead, because we're in this together. That's what makes this role really, really fun. So, Kate Collin, I've been your mayor since December of 2020. I was on the council prior to that, before that a planning commission, so a long time. And in those similar steps, we have Councilmember Bushy, who is here, and she'll get up and speak in a moment. And we also have our assistant city manager, John Stefanski, who will also speak. And it's just been an absolute honor to serve all of you. This role of being mayor has been incredible. I am impressed every single day about the passion and the engagement and the deep caring that our community has for each other. I don't think we can say that all communities have that, but I can tell you San Rafael has that. So thank you for showing up, for being here today. That's one of the ways we show love for our community, is by showing up. So I just have a few things that I'm touching on. One is there is a brand new fire station. Yay! Thank you all for, yes. And the reason we have it is because we voted, all of us, to tax ourselves to have additional funds to have both that as well as Public Safety Center and some other fire stations. So thank you for showing up. I think first responders, they need to know that we appreciate them, and that's one of the ways that we do it. In doing that, we had to close the lane because of all the construction equipment. And I know for some of you, this is a really important thing, having that lane closed to one. It's right up there with all the awful things in the world, according to your email. So just saying, I can even show you those. But I think it speaks to a bigger conversation that we are going to have. And that is a flip side of having a lane closed, also called a lane diet, I didn't make that word up, is the speeding that we have on Point San Pedro. I get a lot of really concerned emails. Supervisor Sackett already talked about e-bikes, right? There's a lot of cyclists around here. So those two kind of go along, and I'm really proud of the Point San Pedro Coalition leadership because they have a roadway committee that Kevin has headed up for many years, and Robert Sandoval, where are you, Robert? Right there, is going to head it up, because what's going to happen is the lane will be reopened in front of the fire station. It couldn't be reopened until 1, the project was completed, and 2, the speed surveys were completed. We got the final report of the speed survey literally last week. Staff hasn't had time to analyze it, but I did get a punchline already. People are speeding, so what we need to have is a broader conversation. Is, as a community, what are you all, how are you going to show up in that conversation? What makes sense? Because speeding has its own risks, obviously, right? So Robert is reinvigorating the roadway committee. There will be a holistic kind of broad conversation about speeding and what can we do as a community. And enforcement is a piece, but really it's about human behavior change. So Robert raised his hand. If that's something you're interested in, please make your way over there. And for you, people who have recently emailed me about it, I've actually been copying Robert, so you're already connected with him. So I really look forward to having that conversation really in 2024 and being methodical, talking about speed data. So if you're into that kind of stuff, which I know I am, policy, data, I am there, this will be something you want to get involved in. So thank you for your patience. For those who did not like the lane closure, thank you very much. For your patience. It will be opened up in the next couple of weeks. The contract has been signed with the contractor, but we are beholden to them to get it on their list. It should be done in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so super quickly. Oh wow, thank you. No. I got that hook by the slide. No, really? Oh, it's me doing it. Oh my God, that is super embarrassing. Okay, see, this is what happens in real life versus Zoom. Okay, you guys didn't even tell me these things were clicking behind me. Thanks a lot. Okay, so really quickly. So one thing that's changed in the last couple of years is we are now in districts. So Councilmember Bushy is District 3. Councilmember Kurtz, Councilmember Hill, Vice Mayor Lorenz Gulati. We represent all of San Rafael. Let's just be clear about that. And the way that they're voted in is by districts. I am separately elected. I'm the only mayor in Marin County that's separately elected, which is, again, an honor. And it provides kind of a stability that I think other cities and towns don't have, because we're able to figure out our work plan over 4 years versus just a rotating 1 year. So I just wanted to mention that because this is new and some folks don't know that we have transitioned to this. Okay, next one. I have the clicker. Wait, sorry. Super embarrassing. Which I tell my kids this one, they're gonna love it. Okay, so I'm not gonna go through each of these, but just very quickly, the way that we look at our city work plan is we have 2-year goals and objectives, which are on the left, policy focus areas with goals and objectives, and then we have city service areas, things that we're doing all the time. It's really easy because there's so many great projects out there to start on the next bright, shiny thing that comes down. If we were only being reactive, we wouldn't start to move the needle on some of these really big policy areas. Climate, you're going to hear from Kate Hagemann, she's amazing. We're talking about sea level rise. If we're always reacting and not being strategic, we're not going to be able to make the kind of changes we want. So that's go online, you can read those, but these are really important. We always want to have community input when we are discussing these. They were approved in June of this past year, and they'll be good for 2 years. But it really is kind of our roadmap in addition to the general plan and all the other plans we have. Okay. Oops, sorry. God, this is so embarrassing. Okay. I am now going to stop, and I'm going to turn it over to... oh, wait, actually, see, I have outlined the topics we're going to cover. John's going to talk about homelessness response. And just so you know, each of these items, thank you again to the Coalition for saying the topics you wanted us to talk about. Each of these are a good half hour each. We're not going to do that to you. You're going to get super top line. But do know we're willing to go deeper, and do find us after or email us. So we're going to talk about homelessness, veg management, crime, property thefts, and transportation and capital improvements. And I'm going to hand it over to our new Assistant City Manager, John Stefanski. I can assure you he is way better at the slide clicker than I am. So with that, I will hand it over to you.
No promises on the slide, so just bear with me on this as I need to have like maybe 2 sets of hands to hold everything I have up here. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Stefanski. As Mayor Kate said, I'm one of the new assistant city managers for the city of San Rafael. I started with the city at the end of July. Came from Alameda County, where I spent the better part of the last decade working for the cities of Dublin and Hayward. In San Rafael, part of my responsibilities is overseeing parking services, so if you have any complaints about parking, please don't come to me. Sustainability, emergency management, and then library and rec, and then a whole host of other duties as assigned as it goes in local government. On a personal note, I live in San Francisco with my fiance, and just a fun fact that we actually got engaged at China Camp. So this whole area in San Rafael is very special to me because of that, so it's great to be out here this morning. As Mayor Kate said, we have a couple of things that we just want to talk about today, and I'm just going to power through these, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you have at the end. But the first is dealing with homelessness response, and just by way of background, I think we all know that we are in the midst of a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis, and within Marin County, we have just over 1,100 individuals who are experiencing homelessness right now. 350 of those folks are living in the city of San Rafael. And there are a number of considerations that are impacting the city's ability to support these people and also to respond to some of the questions and complaints that we get from residents. Most importantly is this Martin v. Boise 9th Circuit ruling, which essentially says that a city can't criminalize an individual for being homeless. And so that means that individuals who are experiencing homelessness are able to sleep and camp on public property. And so that limits us considerably, but the law does allow for us to regulate the time, place, and manner that these individuals are able to set up their camps. And the City Council did just that. They passed an ordinance in July. We never were able to actually implement that because we got sued 3 days before the ordinance was supposed to take effect. And given that, and arguably my entire time now with the city, we've been in court trying to forge a path forward where we're able to support these individuals, break up the size of these encampments, and we don't have anything we can share right now, but we are making some progress there. I will say it's not all doom and gloom. We have had a number of really great successes as a city. We've been able to leverage our affordable housing funds to create 44 units of permanent supportive housing over on Kerner. We've also been able to fund new shelter beds. I think it's 32 new shelter beds and 40 units of permanent supportive housing over at 190 Mill Street. And we continue to partner with our nonprofit social service providers to help move folks into housing and off our streets. Additionally, we have been taking swift action under the state fire code to abate some of the larger wooden structures. I'm sure some of you have seen along the Mahone Creek Path, Mondaro, Anderson, and Francisco. We've been successful in doing that. And I will also do a plug for our 3-year pilot of the SAFE team, which is San Rafael's own mental health crisis response team. You can find more information on that on our website. There we go. In terms of vegetation management, wildfire prevention first, big thank you from our fire department for taking out your juniper. That's a huge thing, and so we really appreciate your cooperation with that. And then just some data points on our work with regards to wildfire prevention. Even most recently, we had the burn bot out along near Fire Road, which was able to clear out the understory this past week. If you don't know what the burn bot is, which I didn't until earlier this week, it's this like awesome, cool, like remote controlled device that has, it's about like 5 feet wide. You can go through and just clear out brush and trees upwards of 8 inches in diameter. So it's a really cool tool. I was trying to get out to see it and maybe drive around myself, but I couldn't on Wednesday. I'll also say that we've also done some evacuation route clearing recently. We took out a number of smaller unhealthy ukes along Main Drive. So if you drive out there, you'll see that we've taken some action there as well. With regards to crime and property thefts, I know this is something that's on all our minds. I'm happy to say, actually excited to say that the city is in contract to install 19 automatic license plate reader cameras, or what we call them flock cameras. And these are going to be a really invaluable tool for San Rafael PD because it's going to help us be able to track stolen vehicles, it's going to help solve crimes much quicker, and it's going to be a huge resource for our police department, so I'm happy to share that. And I'm also going to do a plug here as well, is that our police department is here. They're willing to come out and do meetings or webinars to inform residents on how they can harden their homes and help prevent any property crimes or anything from happening as well. So they're here to be a resource for you as well. And then on to the good stuff, the fun stuff. Transportation capital projects. So a couple updates for you all. Peacock Gap Park Playground. So the design work for that's going to kick off at the beginning of 2024. We're going to be coming out to the community in the spring to get your feedback on what we want to have done to that playground. So be on the lookout for that. And we anticipate that construction for the playground will begin at the end of 2024. Additionally, 3rd Street, I know this has been under construction for quite some time. I drive it every single day. The paving is done, and over the next week they're going to be striping the lanes as well as doing all the residual landscaping and things like that. And I do want to do a plug that B Street in the next 2 months is going to be converting to 2 ways, and so that's B Street between 2nd and 5th. So be on the lookout for some new signs there as that traffic pattern is going to change. And then the last thing that I have to share is with regards to the Point San Pedro Esplanade, which is just something that was raised to us. This is a sidewalk that is on the city's radar to improve, but if you don't know, the city has every year about $100,000 to $200,000 that we spend on repairing and restoring sidewalks throughout the city. And this year, that funding went towards some improvements in the downtown area where we were able to leverage those funds for a larger project. Next year, we're going to be looking at doing a project up in the Terra Linda neighborhood, but then hopefully we'll be able to get this location in the hopper for funding and to be upgraded as well. And with that, those are all the updates that I have, but I want to hand it over to Councilmember Bushy to close it out for the city. Thank you.
See, I'm smart. I've done this before. Get them to put it on the one you want, and then you don't have to click it all. Perfect. My name is Mary Beth Bushy. I represent you. You are my constituents. This is my territory. I've been here, lived in the neighborhood for many decades, raised my children here. They're alumni of Glenwood Elementary, Davidson Middle School, and San Rafael High. And I am delighted that they are both engineers, fully employed, yay. So, all good. Which is part of my theme to close out our presentation is building on the mayor's theme of gratitude and thanking everyone who contributes to make our neighborhood such a wonderful place to be. I am particularly grateful to the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. Denise and Bonnie have steered this organization for many years, and I really appreciate the local focus on the issues that matter here in our community. And I think that's best reflected in your committees that you have. The Marina Committee, building out the Loch Lomond development, Andy's, quick question, who remembers when it was Bruno's? Yes! Yes. My kids still call it Bruno's to this day because that's what they grew up with. But the Marina Committee has been overseeing and supervising that development for almost 20 years. It was approved in 2007. And it's not done yet. I want you to know that there are still 2 commercial buildings that have not even been started, not even permitted yet there. So we're not done. That committee is going to stay in place for a long time. But something that matters in our community, and the coalition is the one with the organizational ability and the caring for the community to keep that going. So thank you, and in particular thank you to Alan for his amazing leadership on that committee. The Wetlands Committee, we have an amazing series of wildlife in the wetlands down by McNears, and the bow swifts that come through there. Amazing part of our community that the coalition is adding to and preserving for all of us. So I'm delighted with that committee as well. The Quarry Committee, those of you who haven't been out to see the quarry, because it's hard to, it's concealed from this side. They have an annual tour in October. Highly recommend going there and seeing what's going on there. Amazing facility in our community with impacts. Trucks rolling down our roads, barges coming and going. Again, the coalition there for decades, being a part of working with them to be a positive part of our community. Disaster prep, right outside, go see it. And that brings us to wildfires. Our wildfire prevention folks are active in the neighborhood. I got my door hanger. For those of you who haven't, a door hanger will appear, and there will be a code in there and a website that you log into, and you get a very detailed report, and it will tell you what you need to do. The tree climber's coming to my house on Friday, and I will be out shopping today for a new welcome mat. Apparently mine is flammable. So be aware of all those things. And finally, the roadway committee. You know, that is the thing that draws us all together. It's in the name, but it's something we interact with every day. It's a part of our lives. And the coalition has a long-standing roadway committee. Thank you so much, Kevin, for all the work that you've done. Robert, thank you for stepping up to take over and to lead the effort next year as we continue to wrestle with the speeding versus safety issue in our community. This is something we all confront every single day. And again, the coalition is the one there making it happen. So, and the final thank you, it has to go to Sandy. Sandy, how many years have you brought food to this? Thank you. We're now ready for questions? Wow. No?
Yes. I just wanted to interrupt for a second because I have to thank Mary Beth for all the time she has devoted to pulling weeds with me and the other volunteers at our Earth Day weed pulls. It helps keep our neighborhood safe, and she's part of that community that comes out and actually really works hard for us and physically. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. So we're ready to start with Q&A. We'll invite the mayor back up for any mayoral questions, but let's get started. I see a hand back there. Yes.
When are the flock cameras getting installed?
They'll be up within the next 2 months. Yeah, 2 months.
Okay. Next. Yes. Well,
one of our biggest concerns you all know is outrageous speeding on San Pedro. Yesterday, a fellow in a green Mustang cut me off, ran past me, and there was a guy on a bike crossing in a crosswalk, walking his bike, the guy went right through. So, and it scared the hell out of everybody. But I'm wondering, can we get one of those on San Pedro Road?
So the question regarding flock cameras, so they are, the ones that the city is providing have been decided via data-driven decisions, and most of them are more concentrated in the downtown corridor. Having said that, neighborhood associations are able to purchase their own. I don't know the cost off the top of my head, and it can tie into the flock system. So for ongoing, I guess surveillance isn't the right word, but for making sure, and just to be clear, And Councilmember Bushy had a lot of great questions when this came before the council. We were very careful about making sure that that data is anonymous, so it's just the license plate. We don't want to be tracking people's private movements. It's not about that. What I've learned from talking to the chief, and to be totally frank, when it first came to the council over 10 years ago, we weren't so sure about it because it's like, that doesn't sound right. The technology has gotten such that it's very focused, number one. And number two, it turns out that bad people do crimes in other people's cars. So what happens is the cars are stolen, sometimes in San Rafael, sometimes in an adjacent community, and when they come into San Rafael, it will be triggered on the license plate reader. The flock system is also in the East Bay, so we will be connected with those other cities and towns. So, but you can see us after if that's something that you want to have in your neighborhood as well. Oh, yes, go ahead.
If speeding and safety is such a large issue, then why can't we reduce the speed limit on Point San Pedro? And I understand that there's laws that take surveys, and if the cars are going faster, you won't reduce it. I don't see that that's an effective way.
Yeah, so great question, and being that Robert is going to be convening us in 2024, but it really speaks to, so the question is about, we know that having fewer lanes reduces speeding, so why wouldn't the city just do that? Part of it because we want everybody to be a part of this conversation, number one. Number two, the laws have changed regarding, so historically the speed surveys, you're right, we were mandated to raise the raise the limit. With AB 43, where there's actually some flexibility there. So this is a deeper conversation, and we want to bring everyone along. As Councilmember Bushy said, this is kind of the lifeblood of the community, and so to have a unilateral siloed decision by the city, I don't think is appropriate, and it really is going to be a cross-stakeholder. Robert, make sure you connect with Robert, so when we have those conversations, you can be a part of them. Yes?
I'm sorry, but can you tell me what a flock camera does, other than take pictures? I mean, is it specific, like is it triggered by something specific, like running a red light, or just speeding, or anyone who comes in and out? What is the flock camera?
It just takes the license plate. It just reads the license plate.
Every single one?
Every single one.
I see.
Every single one. And then if it's on cue, or if it trips something, because it's one that the flock system is on the outlook for. So if it's stolen, or if it's in the system as
so it's flat.
If the person
flat. That's what
is
flat.
running, or if the person has some law enforcement thing in the database, and reads it and say, hey, that criminal just went by in his own car.
Nothing about speeding or any other.
Right, no, it's not a red light camera. It's a license plate reader. And they're fixed. They're in one place.
I see.
So as you go by. So, next question. Way in the back.
What is being done to revitalize retail business on 4th Street?
That's a great one. Thank you for asking. So the question was, what is being done to continue to enhance the economic vitality of San Rafael, both downtown and I'll say and beyond? First, I want to ask you, how many of you have purchased a book in the last couple months? How many of you purchased those books at Copperfield? Thank you. Thank you for shopping local. And I do that on purpose because I do hear a lot of, oh, I wish downtown had named this. We are the ones that support local business. So if we're not the ones shopping and frequenting and eating out, then it's going to be really hard for them to survive. But to answer your question specifically, we have an economic strategic plan that the council approved early in March. A plan alone doesn't do it, I get it. But what it's starting to look at is what do we do for short, medium, and long term to continue to enhance the economic engine. We have a new director of economic development. His name is Micah Hinkle. He came on in April. His expertise is incredible. He was over in Oakland, so we're really looking at what can we do downtown. And I do want to be clear because the downtown's kind of the heart of San Rafael. Like we feel it when we're there. The economic actual engine, to be clear, is in East San Rafael. Our biggest tax dollars are generated by East San Rafael. So I'm very careful to say that because that's an important part of our ecosystem. And then North San Rafael is neighborhood serving retail. So in terms of what are we doing, if you haven't gone to the Business Improvement District website, it talks about all the events that are there. And I do hear that, there's so many empty storefronts. I'm a glass half full kind of gal, which is good in this role, because I can tell you we've had 2 new restaurants coming up, we've had new businesses. When I go down, I actually see new businesses coming in. So I really urge you to go and check them out. But we are committed to having an economic engine. We are funded in a large part by our sales tax. It's not your property tax. More of that goes to the county, it's sales tax. So do keep shopping, eating local, go to the events. There's a lot of gems in our community, and I hope you enjoy discovering them. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. I see the chime.
There we go. The question is, for San Rafael being a very nice, quaint little small city, are we trying to grow and become a Oakland or San Francisco because of all the horrible traffic, all the congestion for trying to get from point A to point B is just a headache. So are we trying to maintain a quaint little thing like San Anselmo and San Rafael? Because from 25 years ago, this used to be a great little place. And you come back today, I don't recognize it.
Right, great question. So it's really a question about, wow, San Rafael is changing. It looks different than it did, and what is it that we want to aspire to? So the wonky policy answer is our general plan actually outlines a lot of that, like the vision of where San Rafael is going. That's part of it. 2, the other key part is what is our housing commitment. The state of California has had state mandates around housing for many, many years. They were just carrots, now they're sticks attached. So we will see increased development in San Rafael. That is just a fact. We are being required to do it. And let me be clear, we don't build housing. What we do is create the environment for the right types of projects to come in. And I hear you about traffic. Part of that trade-off of having a vital city. I don't know about you, but let's go back to the dark days of COVID when you walk downtown, like everything was dead, businesses were dead, everything was going down. That's what it looks like when a community is on decline. A vibrant community has more people, has people on the streets, and there is a commensurate trade-off of traffic, 100%. And I'll say, when I get stuck in traffic, my husband's like, don't tell people this, but it's true. Like, it's so true. So when I get stuck in traffic, I think, this is awesome. People are out at 4th Street and they're shopping. So I invite you to do that. But and I'll just close by saying, the 3 of us, we love San Rafael. We love the way it's been, and we recognize it's going to change. That is just the nature of life. And so we welcome and invite your engagement and to be a part of those changes as we go forward. Do stay connected. If you don't subscribe to the snapshot, please do that. You will know that the issues that are coming for the city, because we want you to be a part of it. This is our city, our community. And again, thank you for having us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, with continuing that theme of gratitude, I have to express a lot of it for this team. So thank you so much, Mayor Kate, Councilmember Mary Beth Bushy, and Assistant City Manager John Stefanski. Thanks so much for being here today. We really appreciate that information-filled presentation. Our next speaker is Kate Hagemann, and she is the city's sea level rise adaptation planner. She's got a big job, big job. I recently met her. She was kind enough to come out to meet me at Andy's Market. We had a great conversation. She has got lots of ideas. She's creative. She listens. She's the kind of person that has the background in education and willingness to meet with communities that make for a great planner. So we look forward to meeting with her. She actually has offered to meet with coalition members, and we're hoping that we can have some regular meetings with her, because sea level rise and flooding along our roadway are issues since we have been, experiencing flooding for years. Our roadway is built for 6-foot tides, and we get 7-foot tides, and it's only going to get worse. So what do we do? And how do we do it? And it costs a lot of money. And what are the plans? And how do we coordinate with other neighborhoods and other communities? Our friends in the canal, our friends in Spinnaker, wherever. So let's work together with other communities and other cities and counties, and she's the one that's going to tell us how it's going to work. That's a big job. Welcome to Cape Hagemann.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was really nice. So, as Bonnie mentioned, my name is Kate. I work at the City of San Rafael. I've been here for about a year, and new to the area, coming from Miami, where I was leading the sea level rise planning for Miami-Dade County for around 7 years. So I have some background in the issue. Appreciate that it's a challenge. But I'm excited to be working in San Rafael. Just before I dive in, I have a lot of slides. This is kind of a teaser. I have 50 slides in only 15 minutes, so I'm just going to do a high-level kind of icing on the cake overview. But as Bonnie alluded to, we have coming up a lot of opportunities, community workshops, and focus groups this fall and winter where we can have a fuller conversation. But I'm just going to do a quick overview. But before I dive in, I was wondering just by a show of hands, if you've seen flooding in your neighborhood already. And a show of hands if you've seen flooding in your property. Okay. And a show of hands if you've been involved in sea level rise planning efforts here before. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to just quickly give an overview of some of the vulnerabilities. So you may not know, but San Rafael is the most vulnerable community in the Bay Area to sea level rise. So I'm just going to paint a picture a little bit about why that's the case, and then talk more about the planning effort that's underway right now. So San Rafael is the most vulnerable area in the Bay Area, in part because the land is very low, the land is sinking, and the shoreline around the community in some cases is very informal. So this is an image of China Camp State Park. I'm sure some of you recognize it. You can see how the tidal channels meander back up into the valley. Marin has this landscape with a pattern of high ground. Thank you, Stuart, for teaching me this, by the way. A pattern of high ground and low ground, and in between those areas of high ground, you often have wetlands and lower areas. So this isn't a million miles away from what the city of San Rafael looked like before the intensity of the development. So this is a picture right before 1900, standing on the hill behind City Hall, looking down to San Quentin. And you might be able to see the railroad there. But you might be able to make out, it's a very old picture, but there are tidal creeks that meander up back into downtown. So kind of going forward in time and looking at what it looks like today, you can see that a lot of the heart of San Rafael was built on top of land that was formerly wetlands, or in some cases was part of the bay. So areas like out by Target and Home Depot were actually constructed on top of what was open water or mud flats. In some cases with structural fill, and in some cases more informal fill, like in this case, construction debris was used to form it was a landfill. If you look even as recently as the 60s in the canal, you can see some faint traces of those tidal creeks still, and the fill being brought in to form the foundation for the development there. So a lot of that land was built, the foundation sort of that community is not very high above sea level to start with, but also it's sinking slightly or subsiding. So some areas are subsiding substantially. So this area behind Target has subsided several feet. And in the case of San Rafael, how the sea is changing is one piece of the puzzle. Another piece of the puzzle is how quickly is the land subsiding or sinking. And those two get added together for the sort of experience or relative sea level rise of the change that you'll feel here. Sea level is rising pretty evenly, especially across this area, but the land subsidence is very variable from place to place, even parcel to parcel in East San Rafael. So looking at this area, generally speaking, the hills are very stable. They're not really subsiding. That's the green colors here. And where you see orange and red, the ground is sinking a little bit faster. In this area, you see the fastest subsidence around the golf course, and in some cases, the rates of subsidence are about the same as the rate of sea levels rising. So sea levels rising about 3 millimeters a year, the ground is sinking at around 3 millimeters a year, so you add those two together, and the change that you're feeling in a place like that is around 6 millimeters a year, so about double. But for most places, very stable. As we zoom out and look at San Rafael, East San Rafael, the areas that were built atop those construction debris areas, or atop thick bay muds, are subsiding the fastest. And in some cases, as I say, sea levels rising around 3 millimeters a year. In some places, they're subsiding at 15 or 20 millimeters a year, so much, much faster than the change in the water. So the other piece of the puzzle in San Rafael is that the shoreline is very informal in many places. So this is a map in light blue. All of that land in light blue is lower than the height of the high tides now. So some places back in woodland are 2 to 5 feet lower than the high tides now, in part because it was low to begin with and it subsided slightly over the intervening decades. And so that means that the ground is already lower than the bay during the high tides, not considering sea level rise, obviously, which will change that picture. So it's hard to kind of get your mind around what does that look like. So if you can imagine 2 people at the same time, one person out paddleboarding in the canal, another person walking in the canal, does anyone want to guess whose feet are higher? The paddleboarder's feet are higher. Does anyone want to guess how much lower this person's feet would be if they were walking into canal lines?
3 inches?
I heard 3 inches. Any other guesses? Let's say it's king tide. The highest king tide we had last year was 8. We had an 8-foot tide last year. 3 inches. Any other guesses?
4 feet.
4 feet is correct. 4 feet is the winner. Yeah, so as you walk through the canal, you're actually at the high tide last year, 4 feet lower than the height of the high tide. So my son saw these slides last night and he said, but why isn't it wet? Which I think is a good question. And the reason that it doesn't flood at high tide is because along the shoreline we have privately owned, privately constructed barriers that are an impediment to the tide entering that urban area. So there are around 16,000 people that live lower than the high tide right now, but we have these barriers that have been constructed over time. In some cases, they're not to the caliber that you would want in an ideal setting, obviously. But you can see in this case, this restaurant here, they've put up a little speed bump that is keeping the tide out. And you can see they've added to it a little bit over time as the tides inch up. So a barrier like this is not designed by an engineer. It's not designed for stress. It's not designed for climate change. But right now it is providing a very public purpose, and that is protecting thousands of people from that flooding. And you can see other examples around the canal. One other thing to mention is that both of the roads in and out of the canal are also lower than the height of the high tide as well. So those roads are being protected by those barriers as well. So where there is a little gap in the edge, like there was last winter in this spot, you can see the water finds that gap and runs from the harbor, in this case, which was at around 7 feet, down into the streets, which are around 3 feet. So it runs along the side of the building here and into the street. So if there are other gaps along the shoreline, you would see that happening more often. So, but all of this area here that's in light blue, again, just to recap, is lower than the height of the high tides, but it's not flooding with the high tide because those barriers are serving a sort of public purpose, keeping the water out. Obviously, there are lots of other places where there's no barrier whatsoever. And so during the king tides last year, you can see the flooding come in. These are places where there's really no impediment to the salt water. It just comes in with the high tide, goes out with the low tide. So that's kind of the context here in San Rafael and why you often light up is #1 in terms of the most vulnerable spot. But there is a long history of addressing this issue thanks to Stuart and Jeff and many others, the mayor, who have been involved, and Bonnie, who have been involved in these projects for a long time. And a lot of great work was already happening. So BCDC, these are slides that we can share after, so if anyone wants to read these previous work, there's a lot of richness there. But just to hit some of the main points, there was a vulnerability assessment that was done for the county in 2017 and found that San Rafael is the most vulnerable city in Marin County. The BCDC, is a regional agency, did a study for the Bay and found that San Rafael is the most vulnerable in the Bay Area to short-term sea level rise, because obviously, as you can see by the pictures, you don't need very much sea level rise to change the flood risk there. Another initiative, Resilient by Design, was a design competition, but they did a lot of analysis. And obviously, one of the things you think about are people's homes, people's apartments that are at risk. But as the mayor alluded to, this is also a major economic center. So each of these green dots represents a business. And you probably can't read this slide, but the businesses within the floodplain, in total, it's more than 12,000 jobs, and these are statistics from 2017, so I imagine it's different now. More than 12,000 jobs, about $3 billion in business revenue, and about $4 billion in land value as well. So it's just kind of regional economic importance, and obviously for the whole community as well. So one of the other studies that was really recently completed was done in 2020. That's available and is incorporated to the city's general plan. It looks around the city, including Point San Pedro Road area, Loch Lomond, and other areas, with recommendations of things that can be looked at and carried forward. So before I talk about the study that we're doing now, I'll mention that there are many other planning initiatives that are going on. So regionally, BCDC, the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, if I got that right, is looking at a regional adaptation plan, which the mayor is a part of, I'm also a part of. And we have many other agencies, including the county, the Transportation Authority of Marin, that are also doing sea level rise studies in this area. And so we're coordinating with them. We have coordination networks, one of which is called BayCan. We also have Bay Wave, and we also have the North Bay Watershed Association, where we work kind of to share and coordinate those different studies. So I sit at the city, and we have a collaborative project with the Canal Alliance, the Multicultural Center Marin, UC Berkeley, the county, and the city, and multiple funders. We're focused on looking at sea level rise in this area, with extra staff resources being devoted to doing engagement in the canal, because it's more harder to engage in the canal. I'll also skip some of these slides since we're short on time, but the vulnerability in the canal is multifaceted, not just the flood risk. But we're looking at what are the feasible ways to reduce our risk to sea level rise. There are many components of the grant, which I don't have too much time to go into, but we'll be working through the spring of 2025. I want to pause though and say that this phase that we're in, there's been a lot of work in understanding the risk, and that will continue in this study. There has been work to understand what are the feasible ways to respond, but that's the primary intent of the study that we're going to do right now. What is feasible? What would be the implications? What would be the costs? What would be the benefits? What would be the trade-offs? And to debate those. Not to be designing or constructing projects, or even really finalizing a choice of which projects to design and construct, but to focus on understanding the feasibility of different approaches and to discuss them as a community, because there's really no easy answer and there's no right answer. So it's a community choice kind of moment that we're at. So I'm just going to forward and go ahead and say that there are many ways to get involved. Bonnie alluded to some of them already, but we're also looking for support for outreach and communications, as well as volunteers to help with the community events that will be coming up. If you're interested in just monitoring an email update, that's also available. But we have an event coming up, King Tide Day, on February 10th, which is like a community science event with students, and we would love for folks to get involved, come take pictures, and measure the king tide flooding that we see. We're also recruiting for a focus group that's for this area, so if anyone would like to be in a focus group in November and December. Those are some of the ways to get involved, and we'll have a series of workshops and other ways to get involved in the coming months. So with that, I'll end and say thank you.
What you were talking about for the canal district, is that
Yeah, the cost is a really important piece that will be the focus of this current study. So, but I want to just emphasize that addressing sea level rise in San Rafael will be in the hundreds of millions. It will be something that will continue over decades, but it is very expensive. So the 2020 report does include order of magnitude estimates, and so for example, the Esplanade area, their low-end estimate for addressing that stretch of road was $9 million, just as one example. So I want to be as transparent as possible that the costs of responding to sea level rise are significant, and they're not something that anyone wishes for, so that is a difficulty. I will say that in Miami, the costs were in the tens of billions, and it's just something that you get creative about, and you think about how you do it, because you have to do it, and it's possible. So the big numbers shouldn't be an impediment to action, but it is important to think about strategically, how can you incrementally address it or creatively fund it. The cost is very significant, but that's why it's an important part of the feasibility discussion as well, because we can, I could go to an architect and say what I would like my house to be like, and then at the end of the day, they'll say, it would be this much. So it's going to be a balancing act between, resources, aspirations, space, timing, that kind of thing. But the cost estimates that have been thrown around are, I would say, in some ways probably conservative, and not knowing the study that you're referencing specifically, but the MTC did a regional study looking at what would be required in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's a strong study, but if that's what you're pointing to.
I think we're out of time.
Okay.
I think there was one more question. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we're out of time. I thought it was a very informative presentation, great illustrations of a big problem facing all of us. Thank you very much, Kate, for that. Before I introduce the next speaker, I just want to mention Sandy Mahoney has a whole lot of food back there. Thank you, Sandy. By the way, she donates this food. The wonderful food comes from our local Andes market. So this is thanks to Sandy for providing the wonderful refreshments. So thanks again, and take some home if you want to do that when you leave. At this time, I want to introduce Bill Carney. He is the president of the Board of Sustainable San Rafael. He's a friend and colleague. He's worked with the coalition. He's going to tell you a little bit about that, and he's going to tell you about Sustainable San Rafael. And I'd like to welcome him. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. It's really great to see everyone here. I'm Bill Carney. I'm chair of Sustainable San Rafael. I am also on the board of a new countywide group called Marin, which has the goal of reaching carbon neutral in Marin by 2045. I have been on the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee on Economic Development, and affordable housing for the city as well. And I know I'm leaving out something, but that's okay.
Steering committee with me. Steering committee.
Is
it 2040?
Yeah, okay, that's exactly what it was. Good, Bonnie. And with Bonnie, I served on the steering committee for the general plan 2040. So I'm honored to be here with all of you, and also with the speakers before me, the public officials, who really are all climate champions. And I want to particularly say that Kate Holland was chaired, I think, or co-chaired the committee for the original climate action plan back in 2009 that Sustainable San Rafael was really involved in helping to catalyze as well. And Mary Sackett serves on the Marin board now with me as well. So Sustainable San Rafael is focused on the climate. One of our big challenges is, how do you make something that's so big and yet so gradual? How do you make that real to people? And beyond that, how do you make it manageable? How do you get all of us together working to manage this huge challenge before us? So one way is to have fun with it, and this is carrying on the sea level rise theme of the morning. This is an event of about 100 people or so that Sustainable San Rafael organized back in the lead up to the Copenhagen UN Summit. That's 2009, no, 2011, I want to say. 2009, sorry, I had it right the first time. And we got folks to come out looking at those maps, or similar maps and photographs like Kate was just sharing, to, well, where downtown is going to be underwater if we don't do something. And this turned out to be Lindaro and 2nd Street. Very popular intersection, right? A lot of cars going through, so we staged this demonstration. This was one of, I don't know how many, but thousands all around the planet that were put on that same day, organized by a group called 350.org. So we were the San Rafael and Marin contingent celebrating that. And this photograph went into that global compendium of events and protests and demonstrations to really get active on climate. So let's see, yeah, so it was a great day. It was October 24th, 2009. We thought we'll bring attention to what San Rafael's downtown could look like if we don't do something. This is 10 years later, 12 years later, same day, October 24th, 2021, and we're just at the end of an atmospheric river. This is what that same intersection looked like at that point. So yeah, climate change is getting real, and we are feeling the impacts all over and all the time. Here in Marin, fire, big concern. We've heard about, we're putting a lot of money into that. Flooding, we've just heard about, lots of money going to be going into that. Drought, we just got out of, and we'll be back into. And then heat events, which tend to get kind of underrepresented, but are the most deadly of climate impacts. People are dying because of just high temperatures. We're getting some national and international attention, sometimes with from unexpected sources, this being Fox News covering some climate disaster. We don't hear so much about the climate solutions, which are equally right in front of us right now, available and affordable. And we can all do it as individuals. What Sustainable San Rafael is focused on is working with our local governments, both city and county, to systemically address, get these solutions in place, as well as addressing the climate impacts that are happening. So just going through these, upper left, EVs, biggest impact transportation. EVs are a way out of that, along with lots of other zero emission mobility, walking, bikes, things like that. Going down below that, buildings. 25% of our emissions in San Rafael come from the natural gas that we burn. Methane is the real name for it, that we burn, the fossil fuels that we burn in our houses. That's a heat pump at our house, very efficient and totally electric. Upper corner there, solar. Of course, we can plug into the sun to feed all this stuff, all the clean electricity that we need. In Marin, we also can simply pay a few dollars more every month to MCE or to PG&E to get carbon-free electricity. So that's a really easy way to do it. And then down at the lower corner here is redwoods, trees. The technology we have, nature has made available to us to sequester the carbon, to capture that carbon that's already in the atmosphere and bring it back down into the ground. So a lot more trees is something that this city can do for that reason and just make a more beautiful city as well. So to do all that, our most effective solution actually is the microphone and the ballot box. So taking those solutions to City Hall and to the county, to the Civic Center, and saying, hey, this is a concern to us as the public. Let's do something about it. Here's what we would like you to do. And that's really the core focus of Sustainable San Rafael. We want to, and we are really asking you this morning to become involved with us, getting up to the microphones, coming down to City Hall, raising your voice or contributing your voice to just communicate to people, hey, this is an important issue, we would like you to work on it. So here we are at City Hall at one of those events. Now, public awareness, obviously we're working with consensus or widespread support around the county. So we pay a lot of attention to building that support. We launched in conjunction with a coalition of a dozen other climate groups around the county. What was this? Back in 2015, in the lead up to the Paris Climate Accords, we got together with some help from Denise here over at Dominican, and we filled Angelico Hall over at Dominican, 800 plus people to come discuss what could be done about climate change. 3 years later, we had the architect, here's Christina Figueres, speaking here at her microphone, the architect of the Paris Accord, which is still the guiding principle globally for what we can do with climate change. She came to College of Marin, also by the same coalition called Time to Lead on Climate that we helped to organize. That means a minute? That means 5, thank you. Okay, so what does that global imperative look like locally here in Marin? This is the pie chart of emissions in Marin. The purple is transportation, so that's where, that's huge. And then we've got energy, which is the blue sector here, which is the houses I was talking about, plus the electricity, which is the orange sliver. So those are the biggies. Countywide agriculture is also an issue, which is in green. So, these are now familiar topics I've touched on. This is what it looks like in time. And where we are now in 2020-ish, a little bit, we are continuing down a pathway, following the green path that gets you to carbon neutral by 2045. That's roughly equivalent to the state's goals. It's roughly equivalent to the national goals now for this administration. And for the global goals. So that's a familiar pathway, and it is in alignment not only with those goals, but much more importantly with scientific consensus about we've got to get there by then, or we could blow past the heat in the system that could lead to irreversible tipping points of irreversible climate change. We may be there a lot sooner than that, but we've got to get there by 2045 or 2050. Okay, so that means we've got to move fast. Here's an early Tesla Roadster there in the foreground, so we've got to move fast. And here's a guy who's driving it, speaking at our city hall, Dale Miller, who was president of the local electric vehicle association, explaining how we've got to promote EVs in order to achieve those goals. So we need systemic change locally to make our contribution to this global issue. And these are the things, again, that I've touched on. This is a flyer that we used at Earth Day this year. Fossil-free electricity, top of the top bullet. All-electric building ordinance to zero out gas in homes and other buildings, and EV plan to zero out gas cars by 2035. That plan was adopted by City Hall about 2 months ago now. So we are making progress here. Organics recycling enforcement, again, an ordinance was passed at the state's impetus 2 years ago by City Hall. Enforcement and education are now the issues there. And trees for cooling and for carbon sequestration. And then the last bullet point here I haven't touched on, but critically important, affordable housing in walkable neighborhoods near transit for less driving, greater equity, and a thriving local economy. So Sustainable San Rafael is about environment, about economy, and about equity. So I can take a question or two or not. One, whatever. Okay.
What, if any, impact does the smart tree have in its current configuration with the goal of Sustainable San Rafael?
Could you say that again in a little louder for me?
What, if any, impact does the smart train have in its current configuration with regard to Sustainable San Rafael?
Smart train, what is the impact of that on this? Clearly, you know, driving a train versus everybody in their own cars driving reduces vehicle miles traveled. That's good. Sustainable San Rafael does support the smart train. And we also advocate for them to get cleaner diesel to fuel them and ultimately to convert to electric as well. So that's the top line thing. Yes.
Two quick questions. Are you aware, are some trees more, this might be naive, are some trees more likely to capture carbon than others if we have the opposite plan? And is there ever been a consideration for a pedestrian bridge from the canal towards San Rafael High School or something like that? There's a lot of traffic that's created by families dropping off children at the two schools.
Right. Pedestrian bridge is something that's been looked at over the canal, and the city, I know, has that on, at least in the think process. I mean, it's very expensive, et cetera. So, trees, one of my favorite subjects. Big is good if you have the space for it at your own property. So, and the right conditions, obviously. So, valley oaks, redwoods, you know, these are iconic trees here. As street trees, London plane trees, the sycamores, so-called. Great street tree. It's big, it lasts a long time, it likes urban conditions. Okay, and I forgot, I had one more thing. I wanted to end on this. You can join us. Please do consider that. You can join us online and at City Hall. We've got a great new website. Check it out. It has letters, our letters to the city there that you can see all the issues that I mentioned and our positions on them. And it has ways of signing up as well. So hope you join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a great presentation, great slides, and it's been great collaborating with you on projects, so appreciate you coming over this morning. We have a surprise guest this morning that was not on the agenda. It's now time for our committee reports, and a couple of our committee chairs and members are unable to be here today. I also wanted to say very quickly, you mentioned the Sustainable San Rafael website. Well, is there anybody here who's ever been to the San Pedro Road Coalition website? Raise your hands if you've visited it. Okay, well, it's a pretty impressive website, and we have Alan Shavitz to thank for that. Alan was mentioned earlier as being the chair of our Rockland Marina Committee. He couldn't be here today. I have his report, but if you need to know, our website address is sprcoalition.org. If you haven't visited it, it is chock full of information about all of our committees, about our community, about history, about events, and we also have links to our webinars that we've been posting on a host of different topics. One of the people who has been involved in at least one, I think 2 of those webinars, is Dr. Stuart Siegel. Stuart, if you want to come on up, he's our surprise guest. And one of the reasons that I thought it would be nice if he could talk very briefly this morning is that our wetland chair is not here today. so she's not going to be able to give her report. And Kate Miller, who has been spearheading our participation in a group that's addressing issues at China Camp, the roadway through China Camp and the restoration of the wetlands there and the sea level rise issues that accompany all of that big project. So who better to speak about the wetlands at San Rafael Rock Quarry and the issues at China Camp than the renowned now, Dr. Stuart Siegel. He's been involved in both of those projects. So I'd like to turn it over to him for a brief presentation.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. I have no slides today, so very brief here. And so I'm Stuart Siegel. I am the interim manager of a wonderful organization called the San Francisco Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, which is a mouthful. Created by Congress in 1972, national program, state-federal partnership, 30 reserves around the country, with a congressional mandate to focus on conservation of the nation's coastal wetlands through science, education, and stewardship. And so China Camp is one of the 2 reserves at San Francisco Bay. Many of you, probably all of you know it well. And so we're working in a partnership with State Parks, who owns the park, and the county to deal with the road that floods, that floods during the king tides in the winter. I think we heard mentioned before about the 8-foot tides we had this past year. Had about 1.5 feet of water for about 5 hours out there. Throw some sea level rise in, like just 1 foot of sea level rise, 2.5 feet for 13 hours, so what Kate was talking about. And I understand that Mary Sackett mentioned this morning that the county is getting going on its road feasibility study for the engineering, and we're doing the work on the biology and the natural resources out there. So we look forward to working with the county and state parks to get that tackled. And I'll just say for the quarry wetlands, that we're working with Dutra to see what kind of options we have there. It's challenging because it feeds into the whole sea level rise for that part of it, for right out here along San Rafael Bay. I think that's part of the quick updates I have.
Thank you. We have a question. I also want to, remind you that you can check out those webinars online and get more information about sea level rise. One of the presenters was Jeff Rhodes from. He's right here with his hand up. So I assume you have a question for Stuart.
Stuart, what options now are being considered for San Pedro Road from China Camp, and what is the county looking at in terms of this feasibility analysis?
So the process to get it to the question of what options are out there, the NER helped lead with David Carney, who was county supervisor, now Mary Sackett is a supervisor, to do a community-based planning effort to get a sense of what the problem really is out there, what people would like to see, both from a natural resource perspective, which is the primary mission of the research reserve system and state parks, and also as a transportation corridor for San Rafael. As folks know, that's the way into and out of the park, it's the way through the park, very important for emergency response. The tribe we've been working with is very focused on making sure that wildfire capacity to reach China Camp is available because they don't want to see the China Camp burn down. And some of you may have noticed the controlled burn that State Parks did the other day. They've been doing a few of those. So we looked at, through that community-based process, was different ways to look at the current alignment of the road, leave it the way it is, tinker a little bit, fix it slowly, raise it up by a couple different ways. We also looked at rerouting the road around the contour, basically higher up, which is pretty much a non-starter for a whole lot of reasons, or just doing nothing. And one thing about doing nothing that's really important to think about is that doing nothing doesn't mean things stay the way they are. And because of climate change and sea level rise, doing nothing is a very different path, and that kind of uncontrolled future is not good for the marsh and not good for the road. Right? And so if we can choose to do that, and that may be the outcome because it's not cheap to do things. So some version of the right of way fixing that road. So Bonnie let me ask why these marshes are so important. So the reason that China Camp and the other reserve in the bay, Rush Ranch, are part of this federal reserve system is they are the 2 last remnants in this entire San Francisco Bay area of natural wetlands that have never been filled, never been diked, never been drained, and go from open bay to the marsh to the uplands. These used to be very common, as Kate had in her slides. That was in Marin County. It's gone an entire system except for China Camp and Rush Ranch and a couple other spots. So it's a very rare landscape and has great importance ecologically. The tribe, it's a huge deal for the tribe. China Camp is for the coast of Miwok, is a really important place. It's a lot of archaeological resources, but it's also active cultural practices they use at China Camp State Park. And so, being able to preserve the integrity of the marshes there on both sides of the road. The road cut through what was tidal marsh. Everything on the inside of the road used to be tidal, and now gets a little bit tied to these tiny culverts in the road that the county did fix a few years ago. That was a fantastic thing they did, part of that process that we started early on, was to tackle short-term issues like the culverts, and that was fantastic that the county did that work. And it was hard for them because it was 2 years to get permits.
That reminds me, I first met Dr. Siegel when our wetland committee was formed, 15 years ago, and our first project was a local restoration project at the little wetland in Bayside Acres at Beach Drive. So the Beach Drive wetland needed some restoration. We consulted with Dr. Siegel and we applied for a grant. We got some fundraising with the community and we had a very successful restoration. So that began our collaboration on different projects. So we really appreciate Dr. Siegel's advice, his help, his information. He often has appeared at these meetings in the past and online in our webinars. So thank you, Dr. Siegel, for showing up today and helping us understand about those two projects. Thank you. Okay. I just also want to say that our wetland committee really started getting to be a popular committee during the pandemic. We have a lot of meetings and field trips during the pandemic because everybody was home, looking at their wetlands, looking at the birds, wondering about, you know, what are these birds? Where do they come from? Where do they migrate to? So we had some webinars about our local birds, and we had webinars about restoration. I welcome you to watch those online on our website, our YouTube channel. The Wetland Committee generally meets monthly and focuses both on ways to protect and restore our local wetlands, as well as hosting these events that I've described. They educate our community in topics related to wetlands, and they also advocate for restoration. So the committee and the coalition has been collaborating with the San Rafael Rock Quarry with regard to their wetlands, and as Dr. Siegel described, he's been looking at those wetlands. Some community members were concerned about the marsh restoration plan that's been ongoing at the quarry marsh. Everybody can see it, it's very visible as you drive down the roadway toward China Camp. People felt that it didn't look healthy, and so we coordinated with the quarry leadership team. They agreed to get a second opinion on what they should be doing to make sure those wetlands are vibrant, and Dr. Siegel was recommended by us as an expert to help with that, and the quarry agreed to hire him, and he's working on that as he described. So that's one project. We've been meeting with the quarry and Dr. Siegel, and with the quarry's other consultants as well, who've been giving us background and information. So that's been a terrific collaboration. We had a wonderful field trip at the beginning of April at Loch Lomond Marina. We had Rusty Skull leading us on the birds of our local wetlands. We went to the Beach Drive wetland as well as Loch Lomond. We walked around, took a lot of pictures. You can see them on our website. So if you want to see the identification of the birds we saw, and there were lots of different ones, check it out. The other thing that our committee's been working on is with regard to the Glenwood wetlands. A lot of people were not really even familiar with the Glenwood wetlands. A number of years ago at one of these meetings, Barbara Salzman from Audubon mentioned how important those wetlands are, and I went, oh, that's interesting, I didn't know that. And so now our wetland committee has formed a subcommittee, and they are looking at Glenwood Wetland Restoration, an alliance that they've formed with a group that is called Point Blue, Point Blue is a wildlife conservation and research nonprofit. And so they're working with the schools, with the school district and teachers in partnership to see what can be done. They're working with the, so they formed an alliance, which is exciting. Also, John Perotti from this organization called Point Blue is the director of STRAW, which provides guidance and support to this alliance, and they're working to initiate restoring the wetlands that are abut the Glenwood Elementary School, which is property which is owned by the San Rafael City School District. Okay, so that's an ongoing project, and we also had a webinar that was given by Julian Wood from Point Blue on wetland restoration. So the other, going on to, we have lots to report on our quarry committees who are, they're all, the quarry committees, all of the coalition committees who've been very active and for years and continue to be. One of them is the quarry committee, and I have some news about that. After 17 years as a board member, as treasurer of our organization, and quarry committee chair, Dave Crutcher is going to be retiring from the coalition. He's an attorney in private practice, and he's been an invaluable member of our board and leader of the quarry committee. He will remain our neighbor and our friend, and we hope to see him at future coalition events. I think I mentioned earlier that we have a long history with the quarry. Most recent thing that kind of got us all organized again and sitting down with the quarry to see where we can work together was when they applied to extend their permit to operate and to complete their reclamation, which is the restoration of the land for when they finish quarrying. They were going to theoretically close in 2024, but that was just the expiration of their permit. It wasn't really a closure date. So they applied to extend and have more time for reclamation and operations. And at the end of that process, we negotiated and agreed to work on 3 different issues. One was that wetland restoration. Another was with regard to roadway maintenance. And the third is with regard to air quality. So we are continuing to sit down and work with quarry leadership on those specific issues. And you've already heard, the main thing that we started with was the wetlands, and you've heard about that from Dr. Siegel. So I am going to kind of skip over that in the interest of time and go on to the report from Alan Shavitz on Loch Lomond, because he's not here. And we still have a couple of reports here. We have, so the village at Loch Lomond Marina, a number of items were already covered by Mary Beth Bushy, but there are other issues. The breakwater access trail was finally completed. The playground was completed, and that was a big deal for a lot of families in this area. Thank goodness it finally got done. There were some delays. And there is construction still that is going on. The Marina Oversight Committee meets bi-monthly by Zoom, and there are plans for 2024 for the committee to continue to host bi-monthly meetings. So I would like to now turn to introducing our new chair of the roadway committee, Robert Sandoval, if he can come on up. I also want to tell you that if you're interested in more details about the Village at Loch Lomond report, the very detailed reports are posted on our website regularly by Alan Shavitz. So that is there. And then I just wanted to give you a heads up that after Robert gives his report, John Lenzer is going to give his disaster prep report. And we're going to try and stay on schedule here. So Robert, we are so pleased to have you as our new roadway chair. You have big shoes to fill after years of Kevin Haggerty leading that committee. But we are really excited that Robert has joined us and will be taking over, or has taken over already.
Thank you, Bonnie. Hi, everyone. I guess I'll start with a little intro because I am new. I joined the coalition in August, I think, September. I've lived in San Rafael for 4 years. I'm a lawyer. My wife and 2 kids are back there. We moved to San Rafael to start a family, and when I was looking at ways to get involved, I identified the coalition, and I thought this is perfect. Really wanted to get involved in keeping our neighborhood beautiful, keeping it safe for families, and so the roadway issues were really what kind of like drove me to get involved. I'll cover briefly the 2023 activities of our coalition.
Do you want to mention your park commission?
Oh yeah, and I should mention I'm also commissioner on the Park and Recreation Commission for the city. So, 2023 activities that we've kind of completed and are kind of ongoing for our committee. First is the medians, roadway medians. We continue to hold regular meetings with City Public Works, and I think the goal last year was to kind of have a consistent median maintenance program, and I can report that thanks to the work of Kevin and Jim Dixon, who's on our median committee, that has been really successful. The amount of median issues that we're seeing is, I think, a lot less than it used to be, thankfully to them. And we can focus more on other issues that the community sees as being really important. The second thing we worked on in 2023 are sidewalk safety issues. So the City Public Works Department has really pushed us to use their online portal to get things done in terms of maintaining the sidewalks, keeping that area safe for pedestrians and for bicyclists. So the coalition's been using the portal to somewhat of a success, and we've been really focusing on targeting areas where there are a lot of foot or bicycle traffic and large weeds that are kind of like impeding the way, to try to make it really safer for people to remove the decision that some people might make when they're walking or biking to go into the roadway, which can be really dangerous. So we've, I think, had a lot of success there, and if anyone has identified areas where there are still lots of weeds that get in the way of the sidewalks, feel free to reach out, and that's really something we'd like to address. We also had recently a meeting with the county supervisor's office and their staff about a slurry seal, which is, I think, 18 months, so it's a ways off, but talking about the need to maintain the actual roadway itself and how we can do that in the future. So there's a slurry seal plan for the future to maintain our roadways. And then goals for 2024, I think, as we've heard from the mayor, is really this partnership to address speeding and safety along the roadway. And so I'm really happy to hear that. I'm looking forward to stepping up and hosting these meetings with the community so that we can have a discussion and really a well thought out plan for the future on how we want to address speeding and possible lane closures and bicycle lanes, etc., before the city just acts and the city kind of just act on that. So looking forward to that in the future and next year, and really having a conversation with you all to see where we as a community want to move forward with that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert, and nice to meet the family. Glad you brought the whole gang. Okay, John Lenzer. John Lenzer is a perfect example of someone who really gives to our community. I have to say, many years ago, I enlisted him because he complained. Can you believe it? He complained, and I said, "You have a complaint, let's do something about it." And there you go. And ever since, I keep tapping his shoulder and saying, "Can you help out?" And he says, "Okay." So he's been doing a great job with this disaster prep committee that he's been leading, and I want to turn it over to him to tell you about it.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. You're the tried and true, still staying here today. Thank you. Our audience is slowly atrophied as as we've gone on. I just want to say I passed out to everybody a little brochure, a little sheet, and if you have not received one, I'll be happy to give you one afterwards. It sort of describes our program, and I won't go on and go over everything that we're doing. We do have a real problem that's unique to our community in that we have one road that goes from China Camp to the high school. And I always think not so much of fire as being our biggest problem, although it is probably the most likely disaster that would come. But if there's a fire, outside resources come in and concentrate on that fire, and it's usually localized, and so one little area of our community can be evacuated, and the fire is addressed by lots of outside agencies. What I really lose sleep about at night is an earthquake. If we had a major earthquake that affected the entire area, outside resources are not going to come into our community. We're going to be sort of on our own. So when I think about what we need to prepare for, I think about preparing for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is we have 2 or 3 weeks in which we're not going to have very many outside services coming into our community, and we're going to be on our own. So we need to be able to set up a triage center to provide first aid. We need to be able to provide rescue. We need to be able to supplement the 2 firemen that are at Station 55, because that's going to be all we have is Station 55. So if you came in, you saw the nice red trailer out there. That was one of our major accomplishments in the last 2 years, was to raise the funds to buy that trailer, to buy the supplies that are in the trailer, and also we have an equal catch of supplies stored locally at San Pedro Cove in a secure facility there. And we have various doctors who would respond and provide first aid, and we're looking for additional volunteers. So we're working on training, CERT training, CPR training, other kinds of training. We want everybody in our community to be trained to provide service to one another. We're working on neighborhood response groups, how to organize those. We're looking at creating more catches of supplies and being somewhat operational should there be a major earthquake. And we're working with local resources. You know, would we be able to pump gas if there was fire out if there was no electricity for 2 weeks? All of the gas pumps stop. All of the drugstores close. All of the supermarkets close. We want to know how they're going to operate during a disaster, so we're working on that. We have 550 children here at this school who would be marooned. Who's going to take care of those kids? So there's lots of issues for our committee to address, and I'd love to have you volunteer. My name is on this. You can email me if you're willing to get involved, and we'll go from there. And if you'd like to make a donation for additional supplies, we'd appreciate that also. Thank you.
Thank you, John. You know, John has done a great job of getting our communities to get organized. We have Firewise communities, we have these neighborhood response groups, largely because of the training and information that has been disseminated through the Disaster Preparedness Committee. So thank you, John, for all that you do and the training and information disseminating and fundraising. So again, yeah, your donations would be tax deductible to the extent permissible by law. So because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So are there any questions before we close out for today? We really do appreciate that you've spent the morning with us. And we want to thank Mike Goldpert again for coming out at the last minute and helping us to videotape this so that others who couldn't be here can watch this. I know there are a lot of people who wanted to be here. Thanks to each of our speakers. Thanks to each of you for coming. Thank you for being part of our community. Let us know, give us your feedback. If you didn't sign in, please make sure that we have your contact info. Please reach out to us if you have issues, questions, ideas, suggestions. Thanks again to my board, to our committee chairs, to our committee participants, and my co-president, Denise Lucy. And my husband, wait a minute. Hey, my husband, he helped with the setup, the signs, you know, those A-frame signs and all that stuff. Hey, and thank you for all the setup for our the facilities here today. We appreciate being able to be here. So.